Switch 2. Ah yes, it has been about 2 months since the launch of Nintendo's most recent, highly anticipated handheld/home console. And I'm sure plenty of you out there want to know, how has it been? I'm sure several of our viewers have Switch 2s already. For those of you, I hope you're enjoying them. But of course, there's obviously going to be a portion of the crowd, holdouts. And with that, I just wanted to deliver on some of that promised Switch 2 content. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and get into some of my impressions, having been an early adopter, what it's been like after these 2 months. So real quick, make sure to like, comment, subscribe on this video, hit that bell. And yeah, I'm gonna get right to it. So I'm gonna start off this video with a couple of random key points I want to address. First off, I just want to mention one of the features of the Switch 2 that a lot of people have been buzzing about online, that several developers have already made attempts to include and implement into their games, is the mouse ability with the new Joy-Con 2 for the Switch 2. I believe one of the games that I have already makes use of that feature, but for the purposes of this video, I have not had any time playing Switch 2 games with the mouse feature for the new Joy-Con, so I'm not really going to be able to comment about it. It is an interesting addition, certainly nothing that I expected, but yeah, like I said, I can't comment on it, so just going to move on from that. And speaking of the Joy-Cons, when I switch back and forth between a regular controller and the Joy-Con 2 Joy-Cons with the little adapter that they come with, I don't really love the big trigger buttons. These would be the ZL and the ZR. They feel very small, and it almost feels like I might miss pressing them when compared to even a $10 PowerA controller, which is kind of crazy. I also want to pat myself on the back here for this one, but I absolutely called it. The release mechanism for the Switch 2 Joy-Con, the way that it juts out to the side, when you're first using the Switch 2 Joy-Cons, it almost feels like that's the shoulder button. And while I haven't had any major issues with this, I've already hit the release button quite a few times, having that Joy-Con 2 just peek out ever so slightly. Another thing I want to mention, what's really cool, and I absolutely respect Nintendo for doing this, your old controllers, as long as they're like the officially licensed ones, they will work on the Switch 2. That is phenomenal. So get this, as a Switch 2 owner, you are not forced to rebuy any controllers. One more quick thing I want to mention is powering off the system is still the same weird way that it is with the Switch 1. As the best way I could describe it, when your Switch 2 is docked, you can only put the console into sleep mode. There is no option to power it off. I never understood this. I find it weird. I mean, like every other home console allows players to just turn it off from the menu with the controller. I don't know why they didn't change this. I guess enough people didn't complain, but yeah, that did not change from the Switch 1. And so now some of you may be wondering, what have I been playing on my Switch 2? So my first Switch 2 game was actually Rune Factory Guardians of Ozma. You guys already were able to check us out covering the game at the Marvelous and Xseed booth from PAX East 2025, along with some other great games. And Xseed Marvelous also provided us with a code, so we were able to get the game reviewed for the channel as well. You already have my general opinion, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I already now have a Switch 2 game that's going to dominate my playtime. I couldn't think of a better game to pick up for the Switch 2 this summer, and I'm really happy about it. But again, for the full scoop, go ahead and check out that quick scope review. It's been out for a little while. We'll be sure to link it. The next game that I got was actually in tandem with Rune Factory because it was available to me when I first opened up my Switch. That was Mario Kart World. Like a lot of Switch 2 owners, in order to cut down on a little bit of cost of this giant investment, I made sure to get the Mario Kart World Edition of the Switch 2. That way you save like $30. I'm not a big fan of not having it on physical. I always prefer physical media, but it was nice to save $30. And yeah, so I basically got a download code copy with the game. Today, I do have limited time playing it, so I don't have too much to say about it just yet. I do love the knockout versus online mode though. It reminds me so much of one of my favorite classic Sega retro games, Outrun, except that this is versus multiple other people, you're not doing branching paths, but it just gives me heavy Outrun vibes. So yeah, I've definitely been enjoying that. I need to put more time into it, but Mario Kart World has been really fun. And the third and final Switch 2 game that I have at the time of this recording, again, this is about 2 months after the release of the Switch, after I got it at least, is Donkey Kong Bonanza. This is actually one of the reasons that I got the Switch 2, because I knew that this was coming out shortly after release, and just being a huge Donkey Kong 64 fan, that game is so important to me. I could not pass up on a Donkey Kong 3D game, a brand new 3D Donkey Kong game. I will say I was a little bit off-put by the visuals from the get-go, but the gameplay was a ton of fun. At times, it does kind of feel like a tech demo, but despite that, I had fun. It grew on me towards the end, and I'm definitely glad I got to pick up this game. You guys will definitely hear a little bit more about that in the coming weeks. But yeah, I do plan to, of course, expand my Switch 2 library as we get new releases, as we get tons of other stuff to do. Metroid Prime 4 is going to be an obvious choice. But for now, that's kind of it. There's not a whole lot, I'm sure you'll notice. But to be fair, I haven't really checked the Switch 2 release calendar just yet. I've kind of just been coasting. Because the jump to higher pricing for games, it makes me want to be a little bit more picky with which games I'm gonna purchase. Donkey Kong was a must. I saved on Mario Kart World, and I'm also again anticipating that Metroid Prime 4 might be a game that I'll get on launch, but other Switch 2 games I'm probably not gonna get on launch. I'm definitely, for the time being, gonna be very sparse with my Switch 2 pickups, just because the console was a big investment and some of the games are gonna cost up to $80. I know that's a sentiment that's been echoed all over the internet. Nintendo really kind of came out of left field with the price point on this one. But I think they did it because they knew that they were going to give value back to people. Yeah, I'll get more into that a little bit later. So as far as the console announcement for the Switch 2 goes, I think Nintendo botched this in a couple of key ways. Obviously, we already talked about the pricing. That's without a doubt. But I also think there were some little things too. For instance, physical game carts were kind of confusing up front. Early on, my impressions were that there is going to be like 6 different versions of each game that comes out. You could get a digital, full physical with the cart, or you could get like a code that comes in a box, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a box and have it be printed physical. So to kind of call back to a previous mistake for a console launch, a portable one too, look back to the release of the PlayStation Vita. The PlayStation Vita was an amazing handheld, but Sony absolutely dropped the ball with that handheld in practically every way imaginable. Besides the hardware that they actually put into this thing, they were making mistakes left and right. And one of those mistakes, I feel, was even bothering with the 3G Vita version. Because yes, it was cool to have the option to have a portable handheld that you could take wherever you go and play online and still be connected to the internet, as long as you wanted to pay for the data and also pay for the special version of that. But I think with the console release, simplicity is key. Why even go that? Why even entertain that route? Now you're giving consumers a choice that they have to make. Do I get 3G version? It's more expensive. It gives me more features, but I don't want to pay that money. But then if I pay less money, well, maybe I'm missing something out. Simplify it. I think Nintendo, when it comes to the issue of the physical games and the way that the games are going to be distributed for the Switch 2, they needed to make this more simple. In the past, we've had digital and we've had physical. And that's worked for like such a long time. And gaming companies in general have done a good job of offering consumers either physical or digital. Physical when they have the means to produce those copies, or digital. There doesn't need to be a third option. There doesn't need to be a game key on a code or any other kind of type of thing. So I just feel that the way that Nintendo announced the whole key cards thing was incredibly confusing up front to me. I purchased my Switch 2 not even being fully, I had it in my hand and I still wasn't fully aware of what was going on with the game cards. Were we even gonna just not have cartridges anymore? Was it all just gonna be these codes in these boxes? But I was so relieved that when I bought Donkey Kong Bonanza, that was not the case. I got a full physical with the cart. Everything was solid. Again, Nintendo needs to keep things simple. I think that they botched that. I think they botched a couple of other things as well. But after using the console for a decent amount of time, I can say, like the PlayStation Vita, it's generally a fantastic piece of hardware. Especially when running Switch games, you would see a huge performance boost. You would see even, I would argue, maybe even a little bit of a graphical boost as well. To be real for a second, the Switch 1 was, it broke my heart sometimes. It was such a good idea, and yet that console felt like it was on life support for quite some time. And there were certain titles that were just hard to enjoy due to performance issues. While it's not the best selling point for a new console, the Switch 2 is now my favorite way to play Switch 1 games. And to that point, the Switch 2 games, they look really good. These are really good graphics. I haven't played too many of them, again, the three aforementioned ones, but the visuals finally bring Nintendo, once again, to the modern era as far as consoles go, in my opinion. Now, the console's design is also a really nice improvement on the Switch 1. First off, I'm really glad that they increased the screen size. The size on the Switch 1 was fine, but after using the Switch 2 for a couple of months, it's that thing when you look back at the previous console and we're thinking to ourselves like, wow, how did we ever deal with that? That screen feels so small now. So the increased screen size definitely appreciated. The magnetic clip-on system that they have for these new redesigned JoyCons is an excellent design choice. It's so much more seamless than the way that the Joy-Con ones work. Overall, the Joy-Cons feel a little bit more weighty. They feel a little bit more ergonomic, I want to say. They feel better in your hand. And the sound that they make when they snap back on to the main console is, I couldn't believe that they actually improved on that sound effect from the Switch 1, but they did it. They sure did it. I do like the Switch 2 dock, but as we pointed out in our unboxing video a little while ago, pretty much the same thing that happened to me with every Switch 1 dock that I had happened again with the Switch 2 dock. That is that the back plate just like falls off. When this first happened on my OLED Switch, I kind of wanted to send it into Nintendo because it seemed like it was broken. But now that this happened with my Switch 1, my Switch 1 OLED, and now my Switch 2's dock, it kind of seems that this is just the way Nintendo designed the docks. I don't get it. To me, it shouldn't do that. Even if it comes off, they should have made it a more smooth way of removing it from the dock itself, as opposed to just you pull it off and it completely separates from the dock. And also, there's been a little bit more buzz about this recently, and I know that a lot of other Switch 2 owners have confirmed this with me, but the Switch 2 definitely heats up. After most gaming that I do, especially in docked mode, I find that the Switch is just super hot to the touch, almost painful to the touch. Now, I can't say that this has led to any real issues thus far. I can't say that I've noticed like a drop in performance. It hasn't crashed on me, but I was surprised at the amount of times I'm picking up a thin black furnace after just a couple of hours of hardcore gaming. It is concerning, but like I said, I haven't had any major issues related to this. I guess there are fans that are doing their job because nothing has broken down. But as I want to remind you, me and all of the other people that have Switch 2s, we are early adopters. This is kind of the thing that we're all worried about, is because at the very beginning of a console's life cycle is when you will have some of the worst issues for that console. Knock on wood, hopefully nothing happens, but yeah, totally can confirm it. This console gets really, really toasty. I have to say that I am really happy with my purchase at this point in time. 2 months in, I can't see a reason that I shouldn't have gotten this outside of the price. I've been using it just as much, if not more, than other consoles I own and even my own PC, so I'm definitely getting usage out of it. It especially helps that the Switch 2 can run Switch 1 games incredibly well, because let me tell you, I have a whole backlog of those sitting around just waiting to be played. And hey, let's not forget, for Switch 2 owners that have the Nintendo Online Special Plus Premium membership, you now get access In addition to Nintendo 64, NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, Game Boy games, and Game Boy Advance games, we finally get GameCube games. They've been trickling out the games at a snail's pace, unfortunately, but we already have a couple of really cool ones like F-Zero and Soul Calibur, and they'll definitely be adding a lot more in the future. This is something that people have been asking for a while, was to finally add those GameCube games, so yeah, you definitely have a lot to do on the Switch 2, even if none of the launch titles call out to you. So now the underlying question through all of this is, was the Switch 2 worth the price? Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna upset some folks by saying this. And I'm probably gonna actually upset everyone by saying this because I'm not really gonna give a straight answer. Feel free to share your opinion in the comments. I'd be happy to hear what you guys think. But basically, I think the price is close. You know, when you look at some of the other consoles that are available, like the PlayStation 5, that falls into the $400 to $500 range depending on the version that you get. Again, Sony with their lack of simplicity. But back to the Switch 2. I think if anyone expected $300, it was not going to happen. I think $350 would have been a super sweet price, maybe like $375, $380, $360. Although they typically wouldn't have an 80 or a 75, they'd be like either 50 or just 2 zeros at the end. $299. $400 was kind of what I was expecting. I definitely thought $400 would have still been a really good deal because we had already seen for quite some time that Nintendo was going to put everything that they could into this console to make it as good as possible. I definitely want to like gut react and say that $450 is too much, but it's just not that far off from what this console is worth. But yeah, I mean, I think the price is close. I absolutely see that people don't want to pay that much for the Switch 2, but think about it this way. Even if it's not as powerful as a PS5, you can't take your PS5 on the go. And not to mention, recently, PlayStation has started to offer up more and more of their games to some of the other platforms. Well, namely to PC. So if I'm getting a $500 console that looks and runs well, but I can't take it with me, it's only going to be locked to home, and it's technically going to have a little bit less exclusives, Nintendo starts to look a little bit better. Most Nintendo first-party titles are not going to be going to other platforms anytime soon. Nintendo is, and this I'm sure has been said before, but the Disney of video games. They have some of the most loyal fans. They have a super wide open audience. They're incredibly accessible with their product. And at the end of the day, they simply don't need to port their games to the PC. So you're guaranteed when you're paying your $500 for that Switch 2, Metroid Prime 4 is not going to be available if you just waited and got it on PC. Whatever new Mario and Zelda games that are coming out, you're not going to be able to play those on PC or anywhere else. This question is something that I really struggled with. I wasn't even sure what I was going to say for this video because I go back and forth on it a lot. I don't want to pay $500 for any console. It seems outrageous. When the PS3 launched, it was practically $1,000 million, and that wasn't good for anybody. $599. You know, I want consoles to be a little bit cheaper, but just kind of seeing what's in here, I get it. I definitely get the price point. Now, I will say, I got a distinct feeling that when it comes to the camera, the webcam, which you also have to pay for separately, and the chat function, I kind of felt like those were gimmicks that don't really add a whole lot to the experience. I really got the feeling that Nintendo was kind of using that to justify the price. Because this isn't just like a knife, it's a Swiss Army knife. Look at all these different things it can do. Yeah, I'm never gonna buy that Switch webcam. I don't care about the features with the webcam. And for game chat, it's so weird to me that this has to be touted as like some big deal when all of the other consoles and, anyone that has access to Discord has been able to do this for like a decade. So that's it. There you have it. The Switch 2, 2 months later. It's definitely a mixed bag. I'm happy to have early access to the games that I want to play. I'm looking forward to some of the new stuff that comes out. And at the very least, for me personally, I can justify a big purchase like this simply by the fact that I'm actually using it. If I get a fancy, expensive microphone and I use it a lot on stream, to me, it's worth the price because I'm actually using it. Or like any kind of camera, racing sim equipment, whatever it is. As long as I'm using it, I can say that I'm not angry that I had to pay all this money right away. But that's going to do it for this video. I've definitely rambled a whole great deal. And we want to hear what you guys think. Let us know in the comments below. Did any of you guys get switches? We want to hear your comments, responses to anything that I said. I'm sure a few of you disagree with what I have to say, so let us know below. Also, I'll be posting on my personal channel, Mash the Stampede on YouTube. Actually, the first peripheral that I bought for... It's not a Switch 2 controller, it's a Switch 1 controller, but like I mentioned before, there is a seamless transition of the Switch 1 to the Switch 2 in terms of peripherals. So I went ahead and I got a pretty cool controller. Gonna be doing an unboxing of that at some point on my channel, so feel free to subscribe over there as well. We'll definitely have more content on the Switch soon, so stick around and don't forget to check out some of our other videos too. I'm Mash the Stampede for Two Stupid Gamers. I'll see you next time.